Here, nerds, we are going to be talking about ceramics, okay? So we are going to be discussing where we get clay in order to make ceramics, a little bit about its history, different things we can do with it, different techniques in working with the clay, and all that kind of stuff in this video. And it's just to be a quickie, so let's get to it. For starters, here's the world. Where do you think we get clay? Now, the big thing is, kind of understand what clay is, because clay is essentially dirt. Okay, and where do you find that? Well, you find it pretty much everywhere, okay? From Greece to Japan to Australia, Africa, got South America, Mexico, United States. And the different areas and the different cultures influence what kind of pottery or ceramic work is made. Notice a lot of them are utilitarian, meaning it's like a vase to carry water, a bowl to hold things, a teapot. A lot of times the clay was used to make something to hold things essentially. And eventually they started adding some cool decorations, figuring out how to get color on there with iron oxides and such, adding some really cool textures and experimenting more. And eventually we started, noticing a lot of more decorative pieces or things that were telling stories. And now we use, ceramic, use clay a lot, not only to continue to make things like, mugs, plates, teapots, as they used to, and we still do. But we also have really cool sculptures and, little knickknack type things that are also made and are a little bit more common nowadays. Anyways, let's get a little bit deeper into things. Um, Also, I'll be linking this video in the description below because it is a really cool sort of like explanation of like the history of pottery, okay? Pottery's been around since the Neolithic prehistoric kind of times and talks about where it kind of came from and all that kind of stuff. So, definitely check out this video if you have a chance. Anyways, moving on. So we have clay, and clay is defined as a natural material, natural meaning it comes from the earth, okay? We don't, as men, make clay. We take materials and, create clay with what's already here, so it's not made in a lab or nothing like that. And basically, it's tiny particles of rock. Okay, you take a rock, you smash it down really good, add some water, boom, you got clay. Okay, so that stuff over here turns into the nice workable clay that we end up using in class to make ceramic pieces. All right, and when we work with clay, we have and make clay projects, we have two big categories that we're actually kind of working with. Okay, there's wheel throwing clay, and there's also hand building clay. And then there's a couple other different types depending on how you're working with the clay and things like that. Wheel throwing is forming the pottery by the action of the potter's fingers and hands against the clay centered on a revolving platform of a potter's wheel. Whew. Basically, that's a long way to describe what this guy's doing here, okay? Got a big hunk of clay, smack it on this wheel that goes spinny, 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 and based on pulling the clay and raising the clay up, you're actually able to form a pot, which is like crazy awesome. And it is a lot harder than it looks until you get used to it. And then you can start, whipping out, 30, 40 cups a day, basically. But, anyways, super fun. If you ever have a chance, definitely try wheel throwing. The other kind of category we talk about is something called hand building, and that's working with the clay with your hands, obviously, and using simple tools in addition to your hands to create it. And there's three big categories. We got pinch, we got coil, and we got slab, okay? And they are very fancy named, okay? Pinch is, when you pinch the clay to influence where it goes. And then with coil, you roll out these long, skinny coils and stick them together. And then you got slab where you're rolling out flat slabs of clay and then sticking them together, okay? Um, so those are the big different categories that you can use to work with, your clay. And you don't have to just do pinch or just coil, just slab. A lot of artists mix and match these things depending on what they want with their clay piece. Okay. So some techniques work better for other things, such as if I was trying to make something that's more like a cube, if I'm trying to make like a clay Rubik's Cube or something like that, I probably want to use slab. Okay. And if I'm trying to do something wrong, not something wrong, something round, like if I was trying to like make, I don't know, a bean bag, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something round or squishy. Maybe slab's not the best choice, and maybe pinch would work better, or maybe coil could help me, get the curves just right. I don't know. Anyways, so there's a couple artists I really want to talk about that are not some of them are really big influencers in ceramics, and some of them are just really cool. They have really unique stuff. And the first is Maria Martinez, and she and her husband sort of created this black on black pottery style, and they lived in the Ildefonso Pueblo. Okay, I'll link the name in below. Um, I probably can't even say it right, but they lived in the Pueblo and they made their own clay. They went up the mountains, they grounded up the stone, they add water. So they made from start to finish each piece by hand, which is so cool. And through trial and error, they played around with different ways of creating these pieces and finish these pieces and ended up with something very unique. Okay. They used a lot of coil in building the bodies of their clay pieces, and they also burnished it, which is how we describe, like, they polished it. They had a special stone, and when they rubbed it on the surface of the clay, it got it like super super smooth and shiny. And then they would paint this iron oxide paint, and that's what ends up being shiny in the end, which is really cool. And then they bury the pottery and have it on, buried in like kind of like a pit fire, and let that go through the firing process, and then when it comes out, it's black. Okay, the clay itself starts off as more of a red clay, so through that whole process it changes it, which is super cool. So definitely check out, I'll have links to either articles or videos for each of these artists in the description below if you want to learn a little bit more. The next one is Lei Xue, a Chinese contemporary ceramic artist. He specifically works with porcelain, and that's why it's super super white. Okay, porcelain is it's a special type of clay. Basically, I think of it as something that's much smoother, and it also is translucent, which means that a little bit of light kind of shines through the piece. Okay. It doesn't mean I can see through it like I see everything, but like it's not completely opaque. And also, it's fired at a much higher temp than regular stoneware clay is. Anyways, this collection of work that he did, I believe it's called drinking tea, but these cans, like they look like discarded cans that are very elaborately painted in that traditional blue on white kind of style we see when we think of porcelain plates and things like that. And each of these are 100% handmade. So he doesn't create a mold and then slip cast it. No, no, it's all handmade, and he really, and hand painted for that matter. And he is very passionate about the hands-on aspect and doing everything start to finish by hand with his work, which is really cool. So definitely another cool artist to check out. The next two are far more, I guess, old. Okay, we don't know specifically the artist. We have some ideas for some of them, such as this one. This is an Egyptian bust back in like 1345 BC. So if we use some math, 1345 BC, that means before like our zero on our like timeline that we use. So whatever year it is, add 1,345 years. So this is like, way over 3,000 years old. So it's a very old work of art. So as you can see, ceramic can last a long time. So if you make a bust of yourself, bury it in your backyard, 3,000 years from now, someone will find it and be like, ooh, this is cool. Let's put it in a museum. Just an idea. Anyways, this is a bust of Nefertiti. She was a queen in Egypt and ended up being a very powerful individual in Egypt. And she and her husband created this a new religion during their reign and all this crazy stuff. So definitely an interesting lady to learn a little bit more about. So check out that link below. There's just a short video that talks a little bit about it. But what makes Egyptian work very unique, I like to look at the details, and you can really see, kind of like what they wore and that kind of stuff. Now, the thing is, with a bust, it's not like a photograph, so we don't know 100% if this is what she looked like. Nefertiti means, the beautiful one has come, or somewhere close to that translation. I have to Google it again. Anyways, she was known as a very beautiful person. So, it's either that's exactly how she looked, because, looks pretty. Yeah, it looks really nice. Or it's, how she was portrayed by the artist. I believe it's Thutmose, they believe, may have been the one to create this bust. Regardless, in this portrayal, she looks very regal, very strong, very beautiful. And oftentimes she was depicted wearing that sort of pharaoh, I guess, hat. I don't know what it's called. Just like her husband was, to sort of like really emphasize the fact that she's a very powerful person. Anyways, Google her a little bit more. Egyptian history is pretty rad. Anyways, last one that I want to share with you is a bit of Greek pottery, because when I think of pottery and ceramics, I automatically think of Greece. Maybe it's because I got to go there one time. Anyways, this was created about 525 BC, so not quite as old as Nefertiti, but just as cool. And they did a lot of experimentation with, like, they have this black painting where they go through this process of heating it and getting it, doing all these special things, letting air into the kiln at the right time and all this kind of stuff to oxidize the paint. That's what we get when get that's how we get the black and the reds showing up just nicely. But a lot of Greek pottery actually depicts like history and tales of the gods, and the demigods like Hercules, feats of heroism, all that kind of stuff is depicted, along with some traditional motifs in the decorativeness across the lip there and across the base. And um, these pots were thrown on a wheel. So just like that wheel throwing vid we saw right at the beginning, they were created on a wheel. However, when they worked with it, they actually, the potter themselves had to like hand turn the wheel or have an assistant spin it for them. That's a great gig. And they make the pot, and then they add later the foot, which is what we call that little base, and then add the handles and things like that later on. Anyways, one thing I do want you guys to see is like have these all side by side and notice how very different they are. Okay. We have something utilitarian like the black pottery of Maria Martinez and the Greek pot. And then we got the two in the middle, which are more sculptural. Okay. And notice how they also look very different from each other. We got one that's very black. Okay. And then we got the porcelain, which is lighter and translucent. And then you got the stone earthenware in our more ancient, I guess we call it, pieces. So there's a wide range for how ceramic can look. There's no specific way because there's so much you can do with clay. Anyways, I hope this is a, helpful little introduction on, what clay is and some ideas of, where clay has come from and kind of like where it's going. Anyways, check out my other videos. I hope this is helpful.